Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all of the books that I read in the month of March. I haven't done a wrap up in a while. I didn't do a wrap up for January or February, but maybe I'll do like a quarterly thing later on, or I'll just try and talk about it in another video. Let me know if you have a preference. I did read 9 books in March, which I'm very happy with. A lot of them were shorter novels because I was traveling and March was a bit of a rough month for me. But without further ado, we'll get straight into the books. So the first one I read was a manga that is Look Back by Tatsuki Fujimoto. This is the same author of the guy who wrote Chainsaw Man, and I love Chainsaw Man so much. Oh my god. So this one is a single volume. It is essentially about two artists, or two manga artists, who end up meeting in school and they get to know each other and they create a manga comic. They kind of find solace and comfort in each other, and it's really beautifully written. It's so heartbreaking by the end. It is just absolutely fantastic. The artwork is just amazing. Like, you get a lot of pages that look really simple, so like they, at first glance, they all look like the same panel, but there's just like so many subtle details and so many subtle differences in every sort of panel, and it's just so beautifully done and so beautifully written as well. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I have been listening to the Hunger Games trilogy on audiobook over the past couple of months, and in March I read Catching Fire and Mockingjay, and these were just like, Mockingjay I feel like was better for me this time around than it's ever been in any of my rereads in the past. These books hold up so well, and the audiobooks are just mwah, they are fantastic. The narrator for the audiobooks, her voice is just something else, and the way that she does side character voices and everything as well is just really dynamic and amazing to listen to. So yeah, I listened to the audiobook for the first time for these. This isn't my first reread of this series. I didn't really know what to listen to, and I told my partner to choose something, and he's scrolling through my phone and he says The Hunger Games as a joke and like plays it. But it's actually really good, and we both got really addicted. So I wasn't planning on rereading this series like at all, but it is absolutely fantastic. It really holds up. And then I was like watching each movie after I finished each of the books, so that was really fun as well. And it was just like such a good reading experience. I think I gave like this one 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously Catching Fire is amazing, and this one I think I gave like 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars, and in the past I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, but I enjoyed this one so much more. Looks like March was the month for rereads, because actually I know why it was the month for rereads, because I had a very rough time at the start of March because of my cat, my beautiful Riri. And so I was just kind of like rereading a bunch just to like, because I wanted to read something but I didn't know what I wanted to read. So I ended up picking up Daisy Jones and the Six, also on audiobook as well. Of course, the audiobook of this is just another level of amazing. It sounds like you're listening to a music documentary, and it's just so good. It's a full cast of characters. The TV show of this also just released really recently, and I watched all of it, and oh my god, like there were some differences from the book which I was unsure about at first, but the changes they made were really good. Like, you got to see more of the characters in the TV show and like their interests and hobbies and interactions and stuff like that, which I appreciated. But for the actual book itself, I completely forgot about the twist at the end of this book, and I've read this book like 3 times like prior to this reread, and I just completely forgot about the twist towards the end. And I did vlog my experience reading this. If you wanted to check that one out, I'll leave it up here or down below. But I just love this. If you have somehow missed out about what this book is about, it's about a rock band in the 70s who were the biggest band of all time, and then they broke up midway through their tour for no reason, or no known reason, until they let it all out in this sort of fictional biography of them. You see the drama that happens between each of the band members, and you grow to love and hate them in equal measure because they're all very deeply flawed characters, but it just makes them feel so much more real. It feels more real now that there's a TV show and an actual vinyl and album and everything that you can listen to. But I remember the first time I read this, I was like, how is this not a real band? And I felt the same way reading this as I did Evelyn Hugo. Like, I was crying because it wasn't real and I couldn't listen to the songs, but now I can listen to the songs. Next up, I ended up reading Pillow Thoughts by Courtney Pepinell. This is, I think, her first poetry collection, and Courtney Pepinell, I feel like, is a very well-known modern poet, and I really liked her stuff. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was very beautifully written, very hard-hitting. A lot of it, especially in this collection, I did relate to, but I just kind of like picked it up as a sort of in-between book because, like I said before, I didn't really know what I wanted to read for a lot of March. Until I worked that out, I picked up stuff like this. So I really enjoyed it. It was really beautiful. Then I finally figured out what I wanted to read, and so I decided to pick up Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This one might be one of my new favorites of the year. Like, actually, it's probably my favorite of the year that I've read so far. I love this book so much and I'm so happy I read it. This is about a woman named Elizabeth Zott in the 1960s. She is a chemist and she ends up not being a chemist anymore, and she ends up with her own cooking TV show where she talks about the chemistry of cooking and the science of cooking, and it was so cool to read about. The first half of this book is largely about her past and what happened to her in the past 10 years in the lead up to her cooking show. I was so invested in this character, obviously because it's set in the 1950s, 60s. There's a lot of discussion about what it means to be a housewife and sexism during that time period as well, or sexism towards white women in particular. So many of the things that happen in this book made me so fucking angry, like really mad and upset. Obviously I didn't grow up in the 50s or the 60s, but so much of this is rooted in realism and what would have actually happened back then. But also on the other side of this, while this is very much grounded in realism and I stand by that, there are a few things in here that are a little bit weird for the time period and also even for now, and I personally loved it, but I can see how that might throw some people off. So like, for example, in this book, she has a dog and she ends up teaching her dog like over 900 words in total, which like isn't really a thing that happens, right? But it was just so funny, and it led to like the dog having its own point of view, and it was just weird enough. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed myself. Her daughter is also like a super genius. She's reading full-on Russian literature at the age of 4 or 5, which is just wild to me. And then there's a lot of discussion in here as well. Obviously the feminism in here and in the 1950s in real life was very much catered towards white women anyway. Elizabeth Zott does seem very much ahead of her time during this book, and there's a lot of discussions that are commonplace in, like, you know, 2023, like this year, last year, that obviously were not even on the table at all, even in the same room in the 1950s. So I can see that sort of throwing off a few people as well, but I didn't care. Like, I'm glad that those things were included anyway, and I don't think it detracted from the story at all. I will say, if you don't like switching point of views like between paragraphs, maybe this won't be for you. I personally don't mind that style of writing at all, but you will find chapters that have point of view switches between paragraphs. If that's not your kind of deal, then maybe you won't vibe with the writing in this, but I did, and I loved it. Like, I loved every second. This is one of my new favorites, and I'm so glad I picked this one up. After that, I didn't really know what I felt like reading, but I still wanted to continue because I had such a good time reading that book. So I picked up By a Thread by Lucy Score, and this is my first ever Lucy Score book. I've never read like her more popular one, Things We Never Got Over, but I really want to pick it up now because I fucking love this book. It is about Ali, who is in her 40s and no, late 30s, and she's working multiple jobs, and one night she's got a shift at a pizza shop that she's working at, and Dominic, who is the love interest in this, and his mother end up coming into that pizza shop, and he gets her fired. His mother is really disgusted by his behavior for getting this girl fired from her job. She ends up following Ali and finds her and offers her a job at her company, which is one of the largest fashion magazines in the world, and it's a full-time job, so it really helps Ali out as well. And it's just, then she has to like work under Dominic as well, so it's sort of like a boss employee situation, but Dominic is really hesitant to like do that because he's her boss, and there's so much amazing banter between the two. It was some of the best banter I think I've ever read in a romance book, like hands down. I loved it so much. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and the only reason I didn't give it a 5-star rating is because there's a few lines here and there, and there's like one scene in particular that this stems from without spoiling you, but there's a few lines here and there that are just a little bit gross about sex work and sex workers in general, and it just kind of gave me the ick. And those lines didn't have to be in there, so if those lines weren't in there, this would have been 5 out of 5 stars easily. Like so easily, because I love this apart from that. So I highly recommend this one. It was absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite romance books ever. I think I'm going to be getting the physical copy as well because I just loved it. After that, I read a few novellas towards the end of the month, and the first one was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Backman. This is the first book I've read by Frederick Backman. This is about a grandpa who is slowly losing his memory, and he's talking and sitting on a bench and telling stories to his grandson and his son, and just thinking about it makes me want to cry. It was really good. It was really like jam-packed full of emotions. It's literally only how many pages? 72 pages. So like this took me maybe just under an hour to read. Like it took me no time at all, and I was crying by the end of this. It is so beautiful, and now I really want to read some more of Frederick Backman's work, but I don't really know where to start. So if you have any recommendations of where to start with his backlog, please let me know, because I love this. It was 5 out of 5 stars. The final novella that I ended up reading was The 6 Deaths of the Saint by Alex E. Harrow. This is apparently the third in its collection or whatever. It's not very long at all. It's like 30 pages long, but there was so much world building and so much characterization in those 30 pages. It was incredible. I really wish this was a full-length novel, because I think a full-length novel of this would be really cool. It is essentially about a servant girl whose life is spared by the Saint of War, and she ends up becoming this really great warrior for her king and her kingdom, and it was so good. I can't really go into too much detail about this without heading into spoiler territory, but honestly it was on Kindle Unlimited. It'll take you like 10-20 minutes to read, but I recommend it wholeheartedly because it was short but it packed a real punch. It was amazing. So they are all of the books that I read in the month of March. I feel like I had a pretty good reading month considering the past few months before that, but I had so much fun with what books I did read, and obviously I have a new favorite as well, and I reread lots of old favorites, which was really nice as well. I think I really needed that for March. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. I will leave all of my socials down in the description box below. I do have a Twitter, Instagram. I've got a reaction YouTube channel as well if you want to check that out. And I also stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/tkitty with 2 Ys. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!